Hello and welcome to our look around the A&A Lounge at Lisbon Airport. This was a bit of a surprise lounge visit, as we were not really sure if we were eligible or exactly what lounge options were available at Lisbon. We were visiting using our Amex Platinum card provided Priority Pass, and the options for Lisbon seemed a little vague, with some pages saying the lounge was closed or restricted to airline guests only. But we went along to give it a try, as we had quite a bit of time to kill before our New York bound flight as part of our £1,000 budget New York challenge. More about that in the link above or in the description. Part of the confusion of this lounge is the A&A designation. When an airline lounge is listed on the Priority Pass, you often have to be flying with that airline to gain access, such as the Delta Sky Lounge we visited in LAX. But we were not flying with Japan's flag carrier A&A Airlines, and we were a little unsure as why they had such a prominent lounge at Lisbon Airport. This was cleared up as we found out A&A is the company that runs many of Portugal's airports, standing for Aeroporto Navegação Aérea, and is totally separate from the Japanese company All Nippon Airlines. Even the Wikipedia page states as much. Arriving at the lounge, we were welcomed warmly and allowed access with no problems whatsoever. So if you are a Priority Pass customer, either through Amex or any other means, this lounge is definitely available to you. The same with any other pass program, assuming they list the lounge, such as the Dragon Pass. However, it seems this is the only way to gain access to the lounge, as there are no direct sales available for day access either at the counter or online beforehand. So unless you are a pass holder or have access through your airline, you cannot use this lounge. There are other options, and TAP Airlines, who we were flying with, offered us lounge access in their premium lounge for £34.99 when we booked the flights. But the A&A Lounge is what is offered through the Priority Pass, so that is what we visited. Due to the confusion, we were pretty unsure what to expect from the A&A Lounge. It was a bit of an unknown, but we were very pleasantly surprised. The lounge was large, airy and very modern. There were several seating areas, such as this large TV lounge space, various comfy options dotted around, and some dining style tables. And our favourite, where we managed to pitch up, was some large comfy seats lined up against the windows. Unfortunately, despite our time in Lisbon being bathed in Portugal's winter sun, the weather had completely turned as we left, so the views were a little grey. But still, we love having a little bit of natural light and got some great views out over the runway, even if it was a little soggy. There was even a smoking room, something now pretty alien to most Americans and us Brits, but this part of Europe seems to be pretty behind in the anti-smoking revolution. We do not smoke, but it was interesting to see. Overall, it was a nice space, it was very busy, and we could definitely see the sitting capacity at peak times, but despite being pretty packed, it handled the volume well and felt airy and spacious. The dining options were excellent. Honestly, it was a less is more approach, and while all that was really on offer was sandwiches, pastries and a small deli selection, this meant it was all fresh, tasty and refilled often. There were some cold sandwiches, which are often far more appealing than the lukewarm, homogeneous sauce-based offerings that you get at most lounges, or there were some hot sandwiches with various meats and cheeses on the other side of the counter. There was also a large selection of pastries, which seemed a little odd as it was not breakfast, but these pastries were fantastic. There were some fresh-baked croissants which were large, flaky and delicious, rather than the normal mini frozen pastries you get in most lounges. It was definitely a small selection, but the freshness made the offering just far more appealing than what we find in most airport lounges. It can't compete with a business class offering, but it's not supposed to. At the bar, things looked up once more. There was a good wine selection with some Vinho Verde, a nice Portuguese red, and a complimentary sparkling wine. Beer-wise, there was Estrela on tap, which was a little disappointing after getting a taste for Super Bock while in Lisbon, but there were self-serve bottles of Bock Dam Black Munich, and that was very interesting. We also really liked the fact that the local spirits were well supported. We got measures of the iconic Ginginja, Lisbon's famous cherry brandy style liqueur. You could try Portugal's national liquor, Biero, which is a herbal tasting spirit, and of course there were port wine samplings. It was great to be able to get one last taste of Portugal before we left. There were also plenty of self-serve juice stations, coffee stations, and a Pepsi freestyle type dispenser. The toilets were large, clean and well serviced. There were also shower cubicles, but these were on request, and as we were not going to shower, we did not want to waste the staff's time. But they are there for you if you do want to shower. There is this large TV lounge, good Wi-Fi, multiple charging points at practically every seat, and as we pointed out, the rather jarring smoking room. The lounge had just about everything you could need. Overall, we were pleasantly surprised by this lounge. We were not expecting much, as we didn't even know if we were going to get access, but the offering was actually really elevated. We loved the freshness of the food selection and found it way more appetizing than most lounges, despite it being very limited. Everything had crunch and bite, and not the usual limp, soggy lifelessness you get from lounge food that has clearly been sat around for a few hours, or longer. We loved the fact that the drinks menu largely reflected the location it was being served. That is something that's so easy to get right, but most locations fail in the attempt to please as many international travellers as possible, but this was unapologetically Portuguese, and we love that. As this lounge is not available to purchase, it's a bit of a moot point as to if it's worth it, as most access is free, but this was one of the nicest airport lounges we have visited in a while, 1,000 times nicer than the Manchester lounge we visited on the way here. The little corner we've carved out for ourselves was very private and really comfy, and we had to drag ourselves away for our TAP Air flight to New York. And to be honest, we wish we had not bothered, as the fantastic Portuguese hospitality kind of ran out once we boarded our TAP Air flight. You can find out all about that disaster in our up-and-coming TAP Air flight review. Like and subscribe so you know when that drops, and as always, thanks for watching.